Great. Thanks. Like Tanya said, this talk is about focusing on the most important thing. And that might sound like I'm going to help you pack more into your day, but I have to be honest. The reason I wrote this talk is to do less, is to get away with doing less. So I had this suspicion that I was like wasting half my time at work, and the problem that I had was, how do I figure out which half was the wasted half? So I started with collecting some data on myself. So I started keeping like a time log, started keeping track of what work I did, how long it took, and how I chose that work. And when I reflected on this, I found it wasn't so great. The processes that I was using to prioritize my work left a lot to be desired. So I found my number one process for choosing what to work on was inertia, which basically meant I keep working on what I was working on. Projects in motion will tend to stay in motion. And that's a problem because there's this 80-20 split where I do a little bit of work and we're most of the way there, and maybe it's time for me to move on. This left a lot of room for improvement and ended up to be like how most of my work was prioritized. Right behind that, I noticed prioritization by decibels. So I work in data, so most of my work comes from people asking me questions, and some people are louder than others. So I ended up just working towards folks who are asking more frequently or more loudly, or whoever just asked me last. And this has all of the usual biases that you want to avoid, right? You don't want to focus just on folks who are bugging you frequently. You want to focus on the most important work. The other problem that this had was, as a staff engineer, you're supposed to be influencing the company. And if you're just responding to the questions that people ask you, you're not really doing that influence. So I saw a lot of room to improve on this, too. And then finally, this last piece, prioritizing by guilt. This is, I said I would do something. It was like a month ago. Somebody caught me in an elevator, and I put it on my to-do list. And, things change. So priorities change, and you realize this isn't the work that I should be doing anymore, but it's on there, and you're going to keep on it because you feel guilty about it. So this is what happened before I stopped and thought about how I should be choosing my work. And to combat this, I came up with a ritual. And this is just a habit that helps me make sure I'm choosing my work actively. And it's pretty simple. I stayed away from high-tech solutions for this. And this ritual, every 2 weeks, I take a break, I step away from work. It takes like a half day to separate myself from the anxiety of the work week and feeling other people's pressures. And I start by emptying all my inboxes. So this looks like taking all the things you could possibly do, putting them in a pile on your floor. Think about it like the first stage of like a Marie Kondo purge. So you take all your stuff, you throw it on the floor, you figure out, first, I have way too much stuff. And then second, okay, what's the stuff that I want to keep? This helps you contextualize, helps me contextualize. The other big thing is it really nails down there's too much to do, and you got to draw the line somewhere. And if you don't do this, then what happens is you just run as hard as you can, and then you draw the line wherever you fall over. And that leads to burnout, and that's a bummer. So this first stage helps a lot with the workflow management. So once I do that, I empty my inboxes, then I take some time and I reflect on the past week, and I consider, is that how I wanted it to go? Was that good? Was there anything I might want to improve on? There's always something I want to improve on. There's always some project that didn't get the attention that I wanted it to. There's some work that maybe I shouldn't have done. Changing priorities, all these types of things. And this helps me just step back and make sure that I'm working on the right work. And then, as you would expect, I take some time and then I choose the work for the next 2 weeks. This is just go through, look at the pile on the floor, pick out like a half dozen things, maybe a dozen things that I want to get done in the next 2 weeks. So that's the process. This helped a lot. This improved it, but it didn't fix everything. I still found these same biases. I would look back on the last 2 weeks and the same biases would still be there, and I started to notice patterns. And this led to the questions. And this is the part that I'm most proud of, because it sounds cool, but really it's just a checklist. So during that second stage, when I would reflect on my past 2 weeks, I would, I'd notice these same patterns over and over again. So I created a Google Doc, and I just started putting questions to prompt myself to stop doing these things, to stop following these patterns. So I'm going to go over some of the questions with you. But I encourage you to start your own list with your own questions to address your own biases. But I'll bear mine right here. So the first big pattern that I saw is that I was moving up the ladder and I wasn't delegating, and I should be. So I asked these questions to myself. First, what can I delegate? What's in my pile that shouldn't be in my pile, should be elsewhere? Then I ask, how can I delegate more? So this isn't just pushing more stuff out. It's also building systems so that I can delegate. Maybe there should be a team working with me on this. Just because I can't do it now, maybe there's some knowledge that I need to document that I failed to do earlier. This helps me build that system. And then maybe what should I be working on? So as you move up the IC ladder, you need to be careful to make sure you're packing your week with what should be on your plate, so you're not wasting that other half of your time. The next set of questions helped me a lot with prioritization by guilt. What must you do? You get rid of that. Anything that feels like you must is usually a good candidate for, you don't need to be doing this. What feels urgent? This is usually, I found, at least for me, prioritization by decibels. If it feels urgent, then usually you're picking up on someone else's excitement or franticness and putting that into your work. And then finally, who cares? What happens if I just don't do it? And if you can't answer that question well, then get rid of it. This all helps also just get rid of the number of things that you need to do in a week, so you can focus deeply on a few things that are important. I think maybe these are the last set of questions. But how would you convince your CFO that they can't afford to lose you? This has helped me zoom out, figure out how am I impacting the business? Maybe how can I do this more? So how do I show up on this radar? And I purposefully choose the CFO because they tend to be really no nonsense and really good with numbers. So they can tell, am I pulling my weight? Can they really not afford to lose me? Maybe a little separately, so this feels a little bit more selfish, but what do I take home at the end of the week? I think it's really important, especially when you're acting at this level, to make sure that you're filling up your own well as you're working. Make sure that your job is refreshing you and getting you excited about work. And one of the ways that this works for me is by making sure that at the end of the week, I'm better than I was at the beginning of the week, that I'm more employable is one metric, but really that I'm better at my job. So if I'm just churning out analyses one after the other and not really making any progress, any durable skills, try to fit some deeper work in. Makes it easier for you to progress. And this keeps me excited and helps me have impact on the order of years instead of on the order of weeks. And then finally, this last question, what would change everything? Stepping back and thinking, again, on the order of years or on the order of maybe even 5 years, what would be the fundamental change for the business that you could start pushing for now? And this kind of feels like the lighthouse. Where's your true north? Where can you be working towards to change the business for good? So that's a really simple system, I hope. But I've found it make huge improvements in focusing on really important work. Really, just simply clearing your inboxes, reflecting on the week, and then taking some time to be intentional about the work you do so that you're having the impact that you can for the company. And then accounting for your biases. I think this gets it. I'll be at the office hours. Thanks, y'all.